So, checking back in with the gun converted over to the HPA kit setup. It really was very easy. I didn't think it was worth making a video. It really, literally was a matter of just removing the two screws that hold the grip frame and attaching the grip frame to the HPA conversion kit. As you can see from the CO2 setup, it stayed together. Again, with the exception of the two grip frame screws, and with the HPA kit, it comes with replacement screws. Very happy about it, quite honestly, because they're compatible with an Allen wrench versus the square pattern attachment, tool attachment that's used for removing the Crossman screws. But it's completely stays together. One of the things I did not realize as far as this forearm grip, it actually attaches using two small tabs. One, as I explained, is a part of the barrel band. The other one is a small rectangular piece with a clearance hole for the front trigger guard screw. That rectangular piece has a small threaded hole just in front of the trigger guard screw that the forearm grip screws into. Now, I was under the impression that it would simply utilize the front trigger guard screw, and that would be it. So I did have to do some modifying to the very small piece that I kept on this particular setup. This one that I bought the extra forearm grip with and cut it down and got it to fit. It actually has to straddle the trigger guard. I thought it was going to fit in between the front of the trigger guard and the drop down portion of this HPA fitting, but it didn't, and I had to grind a slot with a Dremel tool for it to straddle. But I was able to retain only using the front trigger guard screw to hold the grip frame and the plastic, I don't know what you would call it at this point. It's certainly not a forearm piece, but and it pretty much all it does at this particular juncture is aesthetic purpose. I do like the way that it fills in the gap between the front of the trigger guard and the drop down Z elbow of the HPA kit. But other than that, that's really what I have found shouldering the gun as it is put together in the HPA setup is that I, keep my front hand underneath the bottle itself, not anywhere near this. With the bottle and everything, it's very front heavy, and that's where the support needs to be. I did take back in the day's suggestion. I used some double-sided 3M automotive tape on top of the bottle underneath the barrel as a barrel support. Using a quick grip and holding it down, it did eventually set and very well holds the barrel to the top of the bottle without the barrel giving. I did also go about using two hook and loop fasteners that I had purchased out of a group of 20 that is a packaged group available at Harbor Freight. I'll post a picture of that. Extremely inexpensive. It's a cable. cable tie set. So I'll, the other pieces that I have, I will certainly find use for as far as extension cords and the such. But I did also, it was very hard to get them to secure firmly. I cut off the tab that has a slot in it, ended up using more 3M double-sided tape on the bottom and setting up the strap so that it would attach to the 3M tape, which set very securely, and then use the wraparound hook and loop fastener just to steady the barrel on a nice level surface. So one of the things I really wanted to touch on was how truly excited I am about this particular project. Actually, the last couple of projects. I was at work and I really was taking down some notes about things I wanted to talk about in the video. And I definitely wanted to touch on the interest has really been peaked recently with air gunning, and that is directly because of these Crosman guns, what they're capable of doing, what we as air gunners are capable of doing with them. I really got excited, especially with that 1322 project. The giveaway project really was dedicating a ton of my time to the big bore air guns that I have. Really easy to be impressed with the power that a 357 air gun can produce, the power that a 45 caliber air gun can produce. And yet, when you get back to the basics, shooting in a base, and do this particular hobby and not spend a lot of money on it, it really all goes back to your basic 177 22 caliber air guns. That 1322 really reminded me of all of the things that working on air guns, having fun shooting them, not being preoccupied with how much money I'm spending firing relatively expensive rounds downrange, a ton of tins of 177 caliber, 22 caliber pellets, and know you could pull them out, do some target shooting, just have fun with the gun. Not that I don't have fun with the big bores. It's just that you really need to get out to a range, grasp what those particular guns are capable of, whereas I can get just as much satisfaction and just as much fun out of shooting here in my basement with the lower caliber air guns. Really, I couldn't wait to get home and really to make this video. And it's really because of the way this particular project turned out. The other day when I completed the conversion in mounting everything from the stock 2400 KT back over to the HPA kit, I did a ton of shooting. More shooting than I've done in a long time with any one particular air gun that I own. It really, I just had a ton of fun doing it. I started to jot down some things in no particular order, but I wanted to go over them. Number one, the adjustable Sear spring that comes with the Crosman Custom Shop gun at least on this particular gun. Super easy to work with. Adjusting the Sear spring adjuster really got me to the point where it was just a super light trigger. Super happy with that. It's backed off almost all the way, adjusted downward with as little spring tension as needed. One of the things that really worked out nicely, I was a little bit concerned about with the various kits that this particular seller on eBay sells, and the warnings that you may have trouble with your hammer engaging the sear, and the possibility of having to modify your stock sear to get it to engage. It didn't have to do that at all. Very happy with the dot sight. When I originally went to sight in the dot sight, I was aiming for the middle of this target. The first shot hit way down here. I made adjustments to bring it over and up. Got lucky. As you can see, this was the second shot, sighting in the dot sight. It was pretty much on line vertically. Horizontally, it was still a little bit high. Made an adjustment. I hit this shot over here. Tweaked the vertical adjustment and did a 5-shot group. One right on the bullseye, the rest right up here. That's 5 shots between down here and these holes right here. Now that the weather is starting to warm up, I got to get this gun outside. I've got to get it shot at a longer range, 20, probably 25 yards, and see if that accuracy holds up. Light yet firm holding of the straps that are around the barrel and the bottle, I believe, give it a nice, straight, flat sitting barrel, which was one of the reasons it was as easy as it was to sight in the dot sight. I wanted to get into some of the numbers I got. I did go ahead and do a lot of shooting, as I said. One of the things I noticed after filling up, topping off the gun, I was pretty much concentrating as I filled it, watching the gauge that tells me the pressure in the bottle. I filled it up to 15 MPa. Unfortunately, one of the things that I noticed was as I topped off the bottle to the 15 MPa, the pressure reading on the gauge that shows the valve pressure was also at 15 MPa. I knew immediately, obviously, when I had the gun apart, I had the kit apart, and I was just going over everything, either taking it apart or reassembling it. What I must have done was that internal adjustment screw that you can adjust the constant pressure that's inside the valve with. I had to have accidentally bumped it, knocked it, and turned it in a direction that increased the setting that was done previously by the manufacturer, which it was set at around 8 MPa. In the future, when I have the gun apart again, which I most likely will, I will turn that screw in the direction it needs to go to lower the valve pressure. The external adjustment valve is capable of 10 MPa. That the internal adjustment valve, which is what this kit has, is capable of 15 MPa. Personally, having had it filled and having had it sit, I personally feel safe with it going over 10 MPa, definitely under 15 MPa as far as the valve goes. The shooting that I did kind of proves out a sweet spot to the valve itself, which you normally have with any PCP air gun, where the pressure that the valve is producing is going to be an issue with the hammer opening up the valve stem and opening up the valve. The pressure in the valve is too high. Number one, you always risk the fact of it just being a dangerous situation. But as far as shooting, you risk the fact that the hammer is not going to open the valve at all, or not open it up enough to maximize the power capability of the gun itself. So you need to find that spot where the pressure inside the valve can be overcome by the hammer, but it's going to allow you the maximum amount of air pressure to get the maximum velocity out of your pellet. With all of that said, with all the shooting that I did, once I noticed that the pressure was at 15 MPa, I did go ahead and start to shoot the gun. My first reaction to the velocities I was getting, I was disappointed. We're talking in the upper 500 feet per second, just under 600 feet per second, shooting the gun with the valve at 15 MPa. But I was aware of the fact that maybe that pressure is just too high for the hammer. So I just kept firing the gun, feeding it pellets, shooting it, putting it over the crony, watching the numbers, and as the pressure in the valve dropped down to 14 MPa, I started to see the velocities increase. Then I was sure that the issue with 15 MPa pressure inside the valve was a pressure that hammer, although it was overcoming it and producing some air discharge, it obviously was difficult for the hammer to overcome that pressure. It was much easier at 14 MPa. 14 MPa, it was consistently hitting just over 700 feet per second. Between 14 MPa and 13 MPa, the multiple shots that were taken within that range, I hit a high velocity of 737 feet per second. Once I hit 13 MPa, I think that's where I found the sweet spot. The hammer was able to overcome the pressure produced inside the valve at 13 MPa, and yet the very high pressure of air was making it out of the valve, through the ports, and into the barrel. Because at 13 MPa, I hit 760 feet per second. This was all with the Crossman 14.3 grain Premier hollow points. Or higher range, I'd probably want to stay between 14 MPa and 9 MPa. That would give me a ton of shots, all at 700 feet per second or higher, with, as I said, the sweet spot being about 13 MPa, which is going to give me about 760 feet per second. Kind of had an idea of what the gun was going to be capable of in its stock version, firing off of CO2. But having invested the time and the money into working on and purchasing the HPA kit, what were my hopes, velocity-wise anyway, out of what I might see out of this HPA kit? As I fired the gun more and more and realized how much fun I was having, just being able to load a pellet, pull the bolt back, load a pellet, fire the gun, repeat, over and over and over and over again. My expectations of the gun became what the gun was giving me. Got my 2289. Love this gun. Put in a ton of time, a ton of machining, a ton of modification into it. Gives me a velocity of 700 feet per second, but in order to do that, I've got to pump this 35 times. This gun, I don't have to do anything except fill up the bottle. There is no pumping. As I said, it's just pull the bolt back, load a pellet, fire it. And it's going to give me velocities, for the most part, well over 700 feet per second. That doesn't take away anything that I love about this gun. Going to Pyramid Air's website and figuring out what kind of FPE I'm seeing from a 14.3 grain Crossman Premier hollow point pellet, firing at 760 feet per second. That computes out to 18.35 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. And I was like, that is pretty freaking awesome. 760 feet per second is pretty damn good. Came to the conclusion, I'm pretty damn happy with this gun. The way that it shoots, the way that it handles, the ease of the operation of it, the fact that I don't have to use CO2 capsules. I can get a ton of shots off of this bottle. I can get dozens of shots over 700 feet per second. I can get shots as high as 760 feet per second. That all kind of just settled into my mind as an awesome gun. It actually kind of blew my mind after I rethought everything. So what I was getting was extremely happy. Am I going to take this gun out and hunt squirrel with it? You're damn right I'm going to. Am I the least bit concerned that it's not capable of taking the squirrel? Absolutely not. It's definitely producing the power, and so far what I can see, the accuracy to do that. So with that said, extremely satisfied with all of that.